my friends? J.R. Dukes at your service. Appreciate everybody joining me today. Hello, how are you? Welcome. Come on in. Want to make sure everything's working the way it should work. Hello to all my friends on the X platform. You can find me always on X, simply at Reach J.R. Dukes. And of course, YouTube and the other platforms are always simply at J.R. Dukes. So appreciate everybody joining us and coming on in. I have the link. Let me post it real quick. This is a direct link. If you'd like to actually call in, if you'd like to join by video, feel free to do that also. Otherwise, you can just simply make any comments or questions like most people do and just put them in the chats below. A quick programming note. I believe, of course, it's Christmas week, sort of, between now and the next week or two. Scheduling is really iffy and tenuous, this type of thing. So you can always follow me on the X platform at Reach JR Dukes to find out exactly what my schedule is. But I am scheduled tentatively right now to appear on some other programs, and if I do, I'll let you know. But generally, I will always simulcast the program right here on my channel so that everybody can be informed as to exactly what is going on. So, looking pretty good. I think everybody can hear me just fine. Already have a bunch of chats coming in. Thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate it. All right, my friend Zach is already in the program. Thank you, Zach, for being here. Zach, I see all your comments right here. I hope you did not fall out of a tree. I normally don't monitor the stream until just a minute or two before we go live. So, looks like you were just teasing me there. I appreciate that. Julianne, thank you for being here. And yes, I'm sure they're going to lock up Liz Cheney. I'm sure y'all have been following that on the news at some point. Hello to all my friends out there. I appreciate each and every one of you, loud and clear. Thank you for letting me know. And of course, here is the stream that you can click on, the link if you would be so inclined to either call in or to go ahead and join by video. All these options are always at your availability. Yes, lots to talk about today. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. If you are a returning subscriber, it's always a pleasure to have you join me so that we can have a conversation. Of course, I am J.R. Dukes. I am your host. My mission is to help end the terrible, terrible disease of indoctrination. That's what I'm all about. I want to help you live your best life possible by thinking better, understanding the world that we live in better, cutting through the noise, if you will, keeping an eye on the people that are in power over us and making sure we understand how things work, our legal system works and functions. That's what I'm all about. My contact information is always down below scrolling, and you can always, don't hesitate. Feel free to reach out, send me a text, got a question, something, anything I could help you with. That's what I'm here for. I'm happy to do so. It's something I enjoy doing. I feel a calling on my life to do that. And as a result, that's exactly what I intend on doing. So if there's some way that I could help you understand something better, give you some type of advice. Not that my advice is necessarily all that spectacular, but a lot of times we have something that's bugging us. We're trying to navigate life in general. It is very good. It's a very good option to consider talking with someone else about it. If nothing else, it helps your mind kind of sort through everything and make the best decision you can for yourself. Now, quickly tonight, we are going to start with the Dukes feed, and then we're going to move straight into this ongoing saga with Liz Cheney. And I have taken time to break down exactly what type of prison time, if Liz Cheney is actually brought up on charges, and should she be convicted on these charges, what is the possible sentence she could receive for the list of crimes that she has been accused of doing. I actually have the actual report. I believe it's 42 pages long. Now, don't worry, we're not going to go through 42 pages tonight. However, I have some highlights that I definitely want to show you in this report, and in subsequent live streams, I have every intention of really drilling down and exploring certain issues that Liz Cheney and some of the other people are accused of doing. And this also includes, that one lady on our favorite show, aka The View, been a little tongue-in-cheek about it, of course, that Lissa Griffin, she's supposed to be the conservative voice on this show, and in my opinion, she's anything but the conservative side. I think she's regretting her choices and rethinking things at this point, but we'll see we'll see how this goes on the show from this day forward. But at any rate, she is definitely involved in this Liz Cheney saga. Apparently, she acted at one time as an intermediary between Liz Cheney and one of these witnesses. But we're going to get into it, and I am going to dissect that and try to draw a clear understanding as to exactly what Liz Cheney is being accused of. I predicted this was going to happen. We've talked about it on this program. It's so hilarious how the other side is not very happy about what's going on. One video we're going to look at it comes from CNN on this very subject, and needless to say, they are not very happy. When the shoe's on the other foot and Donald Trump and his family are being hammered by this lawfare, it's not a problem. It's justified. It's what should be done. He deserves it. His children deserve it. Every time he was arrested, hauled into Sweet Fannie Willis's Fulton County court there in Fulton County, Georgia, not a peep from the mainstream news media. It was all justified. It was all something that Donald Trump deserves. And now that they see the writing on the wall, if you will, they realize that there's a whole list of people that are going to be held strictly accountable for any malfeasance, any misdeeds that they have done. And of course, this all has to be proved in a court of law. But listen, let's cut through the nonsense. It has to be proven in a court of law. That's a bunch of mumbo jumbo. As you know from tuning into this particular program, the pain, the destruction, the aggravation, the sleepless nights. Don't get me wrong, you're going to have those once you're convicted, but it's all about the journey of torture, the indictment, having to fork over money to hire a criminal defense attorney, having your family attacked legally, of course, in the press and the media, like Donald Trump Jr. or Donald Trump's sons, always receiving subpoenas. Even now, J6 individuals are still being arrested and prosecuted by the Biden-Harris administration. So it's on the other foot now, and they're going to have to live through it, and they're going to have to suffer the consequences of all these people engaging in what I have called this lawfare. And when it comes to people like Liz Cheney or anybody that has engaged in some type of breaking of the law, it's going to be very serious. And a lot of times in the law, it may be the case that you may not be charged with the most severe crime, but any potential charge can really hammer you and send you to prison for a long time. I was watching a show today as one of the 48-hour shows, and it reminded me of a case where I've seen this kid, for example, he was charged with murder, and he was found not guilty of murder, but found guilty of a weapons charge. Well, the judge said, fine, the jury found you not guilty on the murder rap, but they found you guilty on possessing the firearm, and I'm hereby giving you 25 years because you were in possession of a firearm. That happens all the time. And in this particular video I was watching, they, for the most part, did what I have been talking about, teaching for quite some time on this channel. That is, do not talk to the police. Ask for a lawyer. It's not going to end well for you if you talk to the police in the overwhelming majority of the circumstances. Well, make a long story short, in this particular case, I didn't even know that certain states have a penalty that is this many years. This particular woman I'm thinking of received 25 years for obstruction of justice. I'm not making that up. I didn't even know states had that long of a potential time frame for obstruction of justice, but that's what they gave her. She was found not guilty. She was acquitted on a particular murder rap, but received a very lengthy sentence for this obstruction of justice. And one thing I'll say, and then we'll drill right into the Duke's feed, is anytime you hear of an obstruction charge or someone charged with obstruction, drill this in your brain. It is always a BS charge. That's what it is. Obstruction is something the police will charge you with, and a prosecutor will hammer you with if they choose to do. If the police are just looking for something to arrest you on, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be some type of obstruction of justice charge. And again, it's always a BS charge. It's just kind of a panacea. It's kind of a catch-all as far as the police are concerned, as far as coming up with a solution to find a reason to incarcerate you. So I want to say hello to Rosemarie Fiera. Thank you for being here as always. My friend Sapphire, thank you for being here. I appreciate you being here, and I took a look at your video from earlier today. I liked your video. Thanks as always. Okay, we're looking good. Let's see. Julianne said they never had anything to convict Trump on. He was so clean. That is true. And Zach, it's good to see you, my friend. Thank you for being here. BS like disorderly kind. Yeah, that's another charge that is generally what we can call a BS charge. But the big one that they generally go with is obstruction of justice. When you hear of an obstruction charge, it's generally something that has no merit. They're just trying to find a way to hang you for some reason, and that's just the way the system works. I don't make the rules, I don't make the system. I just tell you what my opinion of certain aspects are, and that is definitely my opinion of a charge pertaining to some type of obstruction. It's nonsense. And as far as what Julianne was saying about Donald Trump and the charges being made up. Of course they were made up. Of course they were fabricated. There's a fantastic book I read some time ago. I believe it's called 3 Felonies a Day. And ladies and gentlemen, this book is right on the money when it comes to this type of subject. And what this book basically says is that each and every one of us, if there was a way, and this is becoming more of a reality now, if there is a way for the federal government or the state government to literally know everything we do during a day, the average person in the United States would commit about 3 felonies a day that they could be charged under. And that's just the way our justice system works, our legal system works. It just is. It is a fact of life. There are so many laws, we don't know all the laws as far as a number on the book. They cannot give you a number of the laws. They can guess how many laws and rules are on the books, but it gets very complicated. And I'm not going to take a deep dive on that right now, but it's very, if you run into a problem with the legal system, you're going to have a very bad time. I like the way Donald Trump stated this. I think he said something to the effect of, it's a tough system. I think that's a good way to explain it. As president, he doesn't want to say it's corrupt or it's evil or it's not fair. He doesn't want to undermine the system. Yet at the same time, he's being persecuted in the system, and he accurately and correctly calls it for what it is. And that is, it is a tough system. So, all right, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the J.R. Dukes feed. Got a lot to talk about today. Interesting posts on Truth Social, and we got some general stories that I want to talk about real quick on this X platform, different stories. Either way, I thought these were interesting. We're going to talk about them briefly, then jump right over into the Liz Cheney fiasco. All right. By now, you probably heard about the fact that ABC News has agreed to pay $15 million to President-elect Donald Trump and his future library, which I think is fantastic. What a great idea. Good way to settle the suit. ABC saves a little face by not having to pay it to him directly, and yet they get to make this terrible, terrible lawsuit, this embarrassing lawsuit, especially against somebody who's coming in to the beginning of his second administration. You don't want to be going to war with a person that oversees your very FCC license that allows ABC News, ABC in general, to stay on the public airwaves. It's just a lose-lose-lose situation for ABC. And they realized that. They saw the writing on the wall, and they wisely decided to go ahead and pay $15 million de facto to President Donald Trump. Well, there is some information that's come forward today now saying that this was published by Colin Rugg. New ABC News is considering parting ways with George Snuffleupagus. I'm sorry, I felt a tear welling up in my eye. I have to apologize. It was getting me kind of emotional. After they were forced to pay Trump $16 million. Actually, I guess now they're saying it's a $16 million settlement, according to Variety magazine. Interesting, right? All I got to say about that is goodbye, George. Don't let the door hit you in the you know what. Obviously, one of the main stories going on right now today is this budget extension. What do they call that? They call that a it's just basically a gap bill. There's a word I'm trying to think of. We'll come across it here in a minute. But they want to get away for Christmas. They want to go home to their families, and they just want to keep plowing nonsense into this bill. They want to keep spending money that the government does not have, and that is just simply running up the debt for our country. It's going to affect our children, our children's children, and so on. And at some point, that bill has to be paid. And right now, I think it's 18% of our entire budget goes for interest payments on the debt that we already have, which is just shocking. And then, of course, as usual, they are plowing all kinds of nonsense. I guess they call it pork into these particular bills. And they're being called out on it. Donald Trump has some posts specifically pertaining to this on True Social. Hopefully we'll take a look at that in a second. But I do want to look at this clip here. This is Glenn Beck with Lee's Wheeler. They're talking about something interesting stuck in this bill that they were just about to pass. So
expanded.
A quick peek at it here.
Let me tell you something else that's in this bill.
Okay.
There is an expansion of the Pandemic and All Hazards Preparedness and Response Act. This act, I mean, problematic from the name itself, perhaps. We can anticipate what's in it. It allows the government to declare a national emergency in the case of, another COVID-19 like virus, and force vaccines on us, vaccine passports on us, masking, all of the COVID tyranny. This expands it and actually gives government the power to do it. Again, there's a lot wrong with this bill, but if this isn't a deal breaker, why do you even call yourself a Republican?
Yeah. And
can you imagine that? They just have outed the fact that in this particular bill, this gap bill, this spending bill, whatever you want to call it, as they usually do, they've hidden inside this bill basically expanded powers and spending pertaining to COVID, giving the government more powers to mess up our lives, take away our freedoms. What is this about? And why is this even part of this bill? What happened during COVID should have never happened, number one, and it should never happen again in the United States of America. I've only seen clear deprivations of our rights and our freedoms. This is probably the second time on COVID. The first time was with that Boston bombing. Y'all remember when the Boston Marathon was bombed? And I'm talking about the police, literally ordered the city shut down, everyone off the roads until they caught that second brother who was hiding. I think it was in a boat or something like that. You still don't hear people talking about that. Isn't that shocking? Does that not enrage you and shock you that they get away with these types of actions? It's very scary and very troubling to me that you can have a police department, some chief simply say, we have this very, very seriously wanted criminal, and we hereby order everybody off the streets and everything effectively on a lockdown. Very similar to what they did for COVID. And we should not be giving up our rights so easily. Very troubling, very upsetting. Again, this is something we've talked about many times on this program. It should never have happened. It should never happen again. So now this is a little clip by none other than Texas Senator who won re-election, obviously, and gratefully he won. Let's take a quick peek at this here.
Donald Trump says it's criminal. Do you agree with that, number one? Number two, he said,
I guess I should preface this. This has to do with the border wall that we have talked about and been talking about for the last, 3 or 4 days. This is insane, unbelievable, blatant, and I'll call it what it is. It's criminal. Absolutely criminal. You talk about treason. I think this is treason. You have a acting current president of the United States. Now, he can't be prosecuted for this because of the Supreme Court's ruling. And think about this. He knows that Donald Trump has already purchased these materials for $300 million of your money and my money in the form of taxes we paid. Now he's trying to sell all of these pieces of the wall for $5 a piece, knowing that Donald Trump, which means our money, is going to have to rebuy this probably 3 times the cost we originally purchased it for, because the Biden-Harris economy has messed up our economy so much. Inflation is so high and so much through the roof that instead of paying $300 million for this wall, it's going to cost us probably $900 million, if not more, to replace these materials. Yet you have President Biden actively selling this border wall. Well, Ted Cruz, ladies and gentlemen, thankfully is right now making these comments about Joe Biden, and we will talk.
He spoke to the Attorney General of Texas, Governor Abbott of Texas, and he spoke to both senators of Texas. Did you have a call with Donald Trump?
I've spoken to him many times. I haven't spoken to him today, but I'll tell you what the Biden administration is doing is brazen. Understand, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democrats, they are filled with rage, and they hate Donald Trump. We know that. But they hate the voters. They are angry at the voters for how the American people voted on Election Day. And they are trying with bitterness to do everything to frustrate the will of the voters. So on the pardons, they're trying to do everything they can to frustrate the administration of justice. And I got to say, on the question of selling off the border wall,
this is it.
This is one of the most offensive things I've ever seen. Let me give you an analogy. Let's say you're a sheriff, you're an elected sheriff, and you get beat. You get beaten, so there's a new sheriff coming into office. And let's say you have 10 squad cars that are $50,000 apiece. And in your last week in office, you decide, I'm going to sell all the squad cars for $100 each because I hate the sheriff that beat me, and I want to make sure the new sheriff has no squad cars. Let me tell you what that is. That is theft of government resources. Let me be very clear to every official at the Department of Homeland Security or anywhere else who approves selling off incredibly expensive portions of the border wall for $5 apiece. You are engaged in theft of government property, and you should expect the Department of Justice to investigate you and prosecute you. This is a brazen abuse of power.
Boom. You heard it right there, ladies and gentlemen. I could not say it better myself, and I could not agree more than what you just heard. Basically, he's saying if you go forward with selling this material, he's talking to the auction companies, just anybody that has anything to do with these materials that are clearly U.S. government property, and they know it's just wrong to sell these items. You have Ted Cruz telling you unequivocally, if you engage in this behavior, we're going to hold you accountable. There's a new administration coming. There's a new sheriff coming in town. And if you want to engage in this and, say, hey, it was okay by President Biden, it was okay by the then U.S. government, let's see how that works for you. Because even though that might be true, as we just discussed, being put through the process can kill you, can wipe you out financially, can cause you stress to the point that you're suicidal. I mean, you can drive a sane person insane when you put them through this type of lawfare. And that's exactly what Ted Cruz is telling anybody associated with this nonsense. And thank God he finally is. And Julianne, thank you for telling me what I was trying to think of. It is a stop gap bill. That's exactly what it is. And they are starting to bid. I believe it's $5 a sheet. Doesn't mean it's going to sell for $5. Of course, the state of Texas still claims that they're going to buy anything that actually does go up for sale. We'll see how that works. Supposedly they got a $1 billion set aside for that, but we'll check it out. And Zach, I agree with you. I am extremely happy and glad that have you all thought about that? What if, God forbid, we would be looking at President-elect Kamala Harris? That is a scary thing to even consider and think about. And it's that much more shocking just how close she came. Although Donald Trump did win what I would consider a mandate, especially in relation to the Electoral College. We've been talking about this. We're looking at maybe 2.5 million votes, which is 2% of the entire vote total. That's a little too close for comfort. Yet it is amazing Donald Trump, as a Republican candidate, was able to win, number one, the popular vote, and was able to go ahead and win when he had all of these adversaries and enemies against him. In my opinion, it was clearly and is clearly the will of God Almighty that Donald Trump win. And that's, of course, what has happened. And I thank him for that. But this is way too close for comfort when you get right down to it and think about it. So, and folks, what do you think about old Scott Jennings over on CNN? He's the new guy that they've hired over there to be the conservative voice. Of course, CNN for a long time has been lacking a common sense voice, a voice of reason. I don't always agree with everything that he has to say, but I have to tell you, I come across this clip today. I'm like, yes, this DEI needs to DIE. What is going on with our country that we're no longer a meritocracy, that basically what you look like gets you a job, a government contract, an appointment to the United States Supreme Court, whatever whatever's going on. There is, and I'm not sure if it's in this feed right now, but there was another story that came out today that, where was that? I think it was, well, I don't want to tell you what I think. It's one of the states. I'll pull it up later and look at it for you. But it's Pennsylvania. They came out with a program funded by the state, but it's only available to black people. I'm not making that up. That's exactly what the program is. Just burns me to no end when I hear that type of nonsense. But I'm sure a lot of that's going to start being corrected.
This is the affirmative action
pretty quickly.
ruling.
So let's listen to this real quick, and
is
then we'll
The
chat
affirmative
about it.
action ruling
Well,
from the Supreme Court.
I mean, I think
and you know, just quick context here. You realize the Supreme Court killed affirmative action. So because they knew that that's nothing they're no longer going to get away with. Man, you had the Biden administration and all these people trying to push through this affirmative action. They were like, oh, I can't believe they did that. I got a solution. Let's call it something else. And that's how they came up with this DEI. They just basically repackaged it to try to find a way that they can go forward with the same crazy programs. And folks, one other thing too, on my channel, I'll tell you what I think. I don't care. If you look like me, especially, and you're in public nowadays, you don't ever hear anybody say what I'm saying. It's because as a white person, especially, I mean, I've been there. You feel uncomfortable when this type of subject comes up in public, and they always threaten you with the R word. You're a racist. You're a racist if you talk like that. You must not like people that are not the same color of skin that you have. And most people, when they hear that, or that fear, that insinuation is put out there, what do? They remain quiet. They won't say nothing. They won't speak up. And I can't say I blame most people. I mean, I'm a little bit older now. I don't have kids. I have to support this type of thing. I'm not saying there's nothing someone could do to hurt me, but the point is, I just don't care. I don't have things that people can necessarily hold over my head to cause me a problem. In other words, you can cancel me all you want. I can be canceled on this platform, no problem. I'll just start using my main website, and I'll just start broadcasting from there. Or you just do what you got to do to survive. But for me, it would not be the end of the world. And it's unfortunate, because I can promise you that when the time comes and we no longer are rewarded based on merit, that is going to be very costly to our society. It's the wrong message to be sending our children and our grandchildren. Our country was built not only on God, on the freedom of religion, but it was built on being able to better yourself, being able to take yourself from one class of income, so to speak, and move up. And for the most part, generally, the United States of America is probably, if not the only, it's probably your best chance. I would probably say it's the only place where you can legitimately take yourself from one class and move to another class. That's great for our country, but we have to make sure that all of these freedoms we enjoy, all of the rights we enjoy, we keep. And this is the kind of nonsense that threatens
some universities
to
were using these policies to discriminate against Asian students and other kinds of students. So, pick your discrimination. Who do you want to be discriminated against? Wouldn't the fair way to do it would be to say, we're going to look at everybody's test scores, we're going to look at everybody's applications, and we're going to do it agnostic of race, and we're going to let the most talented and the most accomplished students come to our universities. You mentioned the Supreme Court ruling, by the way, on affirmative action, which I do believe was a seminal moment, because it reminded me, when it happened, that a vast majority of Americans do not want affirmative action. They do not believe in these forced racial preferences. And even a majority of African Americans agreed with the ruling at the time. And so when some people, often accuse Republicans are on the right, but I think a lot of Americans all across the spectrum look at this and say, I want to rise and fall based on my own talent and my own hard work. I don't want to rise and fall based on the pressures being put on me by people who don't know how much work I'm putting in.
Amen. Amen. I think what he just said is spot on. Absolutely spot on. And well thought out, well put together. I mean, all the ways I couldn't be happier with what he said. And make no mistake about it, I even disagree with Ronald Reagan. Of course, I was just a teenager at the time, but way back then, when he put on the court, the U.S. U.S. Supreme Court. He put on Sandra Day O'Connor. He put her on there because she was a woman. He said openly, I want a woman to fill this position. And that's just not right. It should be the best person. I don't care what that person is. I don't care what they look like. I don't care what color they are. I want the best people in those positions. As a matter of fact, when it comes to a quick little detour, when it comes to affirmative action, if you want to see somebody who really hates affirmative action, none other than the sitting Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. And even though he's a black man, I had the opportunity to read his book. I don't know how many books he's got, but the particular book that I read, he goes into detail as to why he hates affirmative action so much. And the short version is this: apparently in the black community, black people themselves treat each other differently. I'm not sure how to put this, but basically on how black they are. If you're lighter skin, you're treated one way. If you're darker, you're treated another way. And through Clarence Thomas, what he said is that he went to Harvard and then he got a law degree. And of course, he's a sitting U.S. Supreme Court justice. He said the thing that galls him the worst is people look at him and they think, oh, he's a product of affirmative action. He went to Harvard because of affirmative action. He's a justice because of affirmative action. He says that's not true. It was based on his merit. He said he worked his backside off constantly. And if you have the opportunity to read his book, it's worth the read, or do like I do. If you don't like reading, you start getting headaches reading too much, you get like Scribe or audiobook or one of those audio things. You can have somebody simply read it to you. It's not a problem. And so that is one thing to consider. But I thought that was interesting when he said that. Give me 1 second. I just want to turn off my notification there. Okay, there we go. Before I started, I always make sure I hit the focus button because I don't want a bunch of clicks and calls messing up my stream here. But I thought that was very insightful. So if you want to know why Clarence Thomas is the way he is and why this race stuff aggravates him so much, there you go. That's the reasoning right there. It's because of his own experiences he had growing up as a black man in the United States of America. And, more and more minorities, not just black people per se, but even you can be white, Asian, whatever. Everyone is realizing what we already know, and that is you're teaching people to be a victim when you tell them that you deserve something special, something more, a shortcut, an appointment, a job, a contract, whatever, because of the color of your skin. It's a terrible message to be sending our children, our grandchildren, whomever. It's a terrible message for the world that the way we conduct this affirmative action, this DEI, whatever you want to call it, it's just a terrible, sad message. And as Zach said here, we can redefine and reimagine what can be. I appreciate your play on words right there. So, okay. And the final thing I want to go over on this particular feed here, this was very interesting today, and I thought it was funny. And this was on Truth Social. This is on AOC's handle right here on the X platform. She thinks that this was a compliment, but I want to read this to you, and then you can tell me what y'all think about this. So Donald Trump says, really too bad that AOC lost the battle for leadership seat in the Democratic Party. She should keep trying. Someday she will be successful, ! Now, when I read that earlier today, I thought to myself, he is being sarcastic. That's the way I took it. I'm curious if you guys agree or disagree, but AOC seems to think that this is legit. And this is straight up. I definitely don't read it that way. I mean, she's AOC after all. And for a little bit of context, this has to do with whatever the department, the committee that she serves on there at the House of Representatives. She ran against another gentleman to be what's going to be called the second seat, the minority seat. As far as I think they call it the ranking chairman, the more I'm thinking about it. She wanted to be the ranking member of that committee. And the person she went to battle with is like in the 70s. Well, she lost and he won. And this is the result that President Trump was making this truth post about. So anyway, AOC says, damn, it's bad when even Trump is feeling bad for me. And then she's got that laughing emoji. I'm just curious if you guys clear to chime in. Let me know if you think that is sarcastic. We all know Donald Trump. I took it as clear sarcasm. or it can be legit. But I just, I thought it was interesting. It was interesting because of the people involved, and you kind of have to know a little bit about Donald Trump. One other thing, too, I believe there is a poll in here. If y'all would like to opine in that poll, feel free to do so. You may want to wait till after we review Liz Cheney and the nonsense going on here, but we'll take a look at it before we conclude today. All right, so let me switch over now. Let's just briefly take a peek. I can't talk about Truth Social, then not discuss that, at least quickly here. All right, Donald Trump. This is Truth Social. Now, these are posts that just are, well, I should say they're newer posts of Donald Trump, and there's 2 or 3 that are interesting. And this is the post we were just talking about pertaining to AOC. Really too bad that AOC lost the battle for the leadership. So that's where they took it from. Again, I took it as being an exaggeration or, he's just being sarcastic. Let me see what the comments say on that now that I'm thinking about it. There she is laughing. The only waitress in history who brings nothing to the table. That's cute. This is Dr. Ben Carlson. We've been conditioned to think that only politicians can solve our problems. But at some point, maybe we will wake up and recognize it was the politicians who created our problems. Okay. I was hoping somebody was going to talk about sarcasm or not. About an hour ago, President Trump said, and this, of course, is very spot on because it's pertaining to what I have been informed, correctly so, is the stopgap bill. Thank you, Julianne, for pointing that out. Donald Trump says, sounds like the ridiculous and extraordinary expense of continuing resolution plus is dying fast. But can anyone imagine passing it without either terminating or extending the debt ceiling guillotine coming up in June, unless the Democrats terminate or substantially extend debt ceiling now? I will fight till the end. This is a nasty trap set in place by the radical left Democrats. They are looking to embarrass us in June when it comes up for a vote. That's a great point. Remember, there's 2 different things. There's the permission to spend the money, which is what this particular bill is about. And then there's something called the debt ceiling, and that is basically we can only go to a particular point in the negative, in the red. If Congress does not extend that debt ceiling, then for the most part, everything comes to a stop, except, I believe, essential functions. So to me, very smart, very wise of President-elect Donald Trump to point that out. It's a trap. Stop. He's putting the SOS out for all the Republicans to say, we're not going to play this game. It needs to stop. He continues, the people that extended it for September 20th to June 1st should be ashamed of themselves. It was political malpractice. Also, the Communist Global Engagement Center, a project crooked Hillary Clinton, should not in any way, shape, or form be extended. And shielding out the very corrupt J6 Unselect Committee, and we're going to talk about that, of political losers and thugs would be suicidal for any Republican approving it. I think that's a very well truth put out by our president. So what do y'all think? Any comments? Put that in. I'd love to read what you guys are thinking about that. We have Julianne says pit AOC against combat. You know, I like AOC. I don't agree with her politics, obviously. Well, it doesn't hurt that I think she's an attractive woman. Nothing wrong with that. She's very intelligent. She's clearly smart. I don't think anybody really disagrees with that. She's just wrong on policy. She's wrong on how to run things. Other than that, I definitely think she's got a bright future in the Democratic Party. Hopefully there's some leader that rises up, because I'm telling you folks, they are still hanging on to the Kamala Harris and Joe Biden radical Nancy Pelosi, all this left, far left wing ideology that got them in trouble in this past election. And most of them are not swearing off all that nonsense. And I'm talking about this wokeism, this allowing men to compete with women in sports. Just, you can't say Merry Christmas anymore. You have to tell people my pronouns are him he, whatever. We know what we're talking about here. I don't see any of them effectively getting a spine. Who was that? Senator John Kerry made a comment like that today. He said that it's John Kennedy. I'm sorry, John Kennedy from Louisiana, Republican from the great state of Louisiana. In one of the conference hearings today, he was telling this particular guy, listen, you need to contact Amazon, order a spine so that you have one, so that you can take a position, take a stance. And I think he was also talking about the same subject with the men changing with women, this type of nonsense. And I'm glad he said that. So, all right, moving on. Let's go ahead and dive into, make sure I got my markers here set. We're going to go ahead and dive into Liz Cheney. And just as a quick little FYI, you may notice my background here. Obviously, I've been trying to go with some Christmas type backgrounds. If you're wanting to know what this thing is right here, y'all remember that movie back? It's one of my favorite Christmas movies. I think it's the year Without a Santa Claus, and he had Heat Miser and Mr. Freeze. That's my version of Heat Miser. So I just thought that was cute to put his head in there right there. So if you're wondering what's going on, no, I don't think it's Halloween. It just was something I thought was cute, and that's what I wanted to put in there and explain to everyone. Okay, let's go ahead and let's drill down on some of this nonsense with Sweet Liz. All righty, we're going to go ahead and just share screens. All right, here we go. Now, some of this you may be aware of, some you might not be aware of, but it's very important that you have a basic understanding. I'm not going to go through every page of this, but some of these allegations that are in here are shocking. They actually shocked me. They did a fantastic job on this report. I mean, sometimes I read these reports and they're boring. I mean, straight up, they're just boring. I don't find it that interesting. The people that put this report together, they really did a very thorough investigation, in my opinion. I want to hit some highlights of this with you, and you guys can tell me if you agree. So let's chat about a few of these screens, then we'll watch a clip and we'll continue on. So this was released by the Committee on House Administration. This is directly from their website at CHA and .house.gov. Press release. All right, this is Chairman Loudermilk's release from releases second. This is his second January 6, 2021 report, and this has to do with the issues relating to Liz Cheney and others, I might add, in this so-called Blue Ribbon Select Committee. Here's a spoiler alert. This committee is crooked. It was crooked. The whole thing was a sham. The fix is in. And when you go through these allegations, you're going to see why. So this is dated as of yesterday, Washington. And it says here's their top findings. All right. They were charged with doing this, and they lay it out right here. The first two or three: former Representative Liz Cheney colluded with star witness Cassidy Hutchinson, and we're going to talk about these people, with Hutchinson's attorneys without his knowledge. That's a big no-no. Former Representative Liz Cheney should be investigated for potential criminal witness tampering based on the new information about her communication. Remember, Liz Cheney, I guess she still is, but at this time she was a member of the bar. When you are a member of the bar, the people that license attorneys, you have certain ethical obligations you have to adhere to, certain things that you have to do, and you're not allowed to violate these rules. That's just what they call them, rules of conduct. And sometimes they're called canons of conduct, but a lot of that has to do with judges. But the bottom line is this: it is highly, highly improper. It's a big, big no-no. You can be disbarred for this type of behavior. And that is to talk with a particular witness when you know they have representation with another attorney. And that's exactly what Liz Cheney is guilty of. And this is where that girl from The View, that Anna Farrow, whatever her name is, she's one of the hosts on The View. Allegedly, at first, she was using her as a middleman, if you will, to contact this woman, even though it was really appropriate. And unfortunately for Liz Cheney, ladies and gentlemen, the problem she's going to have now is, this is the big problem, of course, the problem she's going to have now is that can also be considered in a criminal context as witness tampering, which is a big no-no. Here is the actual report. A few highlights I want to hit on this. It is 128 pages. Don't worry, I have no intention of going through every single page right now. I just want to show you why this is making such a huge wave in the news press right now. And as a matter of fact, I would imagine Liz Cheney is on the phone trying to contact Joe Biden, whoever, maybe her BFF, Kamala Harris, saying, hey, you know how I sit with you day after day, telling everybody how bad Donald Trump is? I need a favor. Can you get the old guy to sign me one of those pardons? Because if he does not, it looks really bad for her. And and Donald Trump knows Liz Cheney is one of the people that has been a huge thorn in his side. Liz Cheney and Donald Trump's animosity is something that is not minor. It's not small. They hate each other. They have hated each other for some time now. Remember, it was Liz Cheney that did all this nonsense by herself. Instead of representing the voters that put her in Congress, she decided she knew best, and she did anything and everything she could to cross Donald Trump. And at the time, she was the third most powerful Republican in Washington, D.C. The short version is Donald Trump decided to bring up a primary challenger. Same thing you hear about in the news that Elon Musk and the Republicans are threatening to do with any of these obstructionist type Republicans, is to primary them, which means you put up a challenger against them in a Republican primary. And that's what happened to Liz Cheney. She lost substantially in the Republican primary there in Wyoming. And of course, the person that the Republicans chose to primary her is now the person sitting in her seat. And of course, Liz Cheney is not taking this nice and easy. She's pretty livid about it. And I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know, because we all know they hate each other. And we all know Liz Cheney was sitting beside Kamala Harris or having speeches with her every single opportunity she had. Liz Cheney even said, I'm going to devote myself, my resources, my effort to do whatever I can possibly do to prevent Donald Trump from ever going back to the White House. I wonder how well that worked out for her. Well, we know how well that worked out for her. Didn't work out at all. So, yay for that. Zach says, I'm in the middle of watching Mrs. Miracle. Okay. Julian says, Cassie's testimony on Trump was so dumb. Yes. We're going to put them pieces together right now on all these players so that everybody has kind of an idea of what I'm talking about. But take a look at this here. We're going to skip the cover letter. This is where it gets good. He lists out the highlights, I guess you can say, pertaining to the findings. And I realize you may not be able to see this on your phone. Let me blow it up just a little bit. See if that works. Okay. I don't know if you can read that. Let me see what it does. There we go. It's a little bit bigger. Okay. I'm just going to put right below my circle bubble here. Take a look at this. Finding number 1. President Trump did not attack his Secret Service detail at any time in January 6th. Remember that big story saying Donald Trump was insistent on going to the actual Capitol building, and it said Secret Service said it's not safe. Mr. President, we have to take you back where you're safe. Allegedly, according to these people that came forward, Donald Trump choked the Secret Service agent and become violent. He was insistent that he was going to go back to the Capitol. Finding 2, there was no pre-planned off-the-record move to the Capitol in the days leading up to January 6. Okay, these are all findings that are in direct contradiction of what the so-called J6 committee found and what the evidence of these people reportedly said or did say under oath, meaning they could be prosecuted for perjury. And that's what he's getting to here. Finding number 3, there is no evidence that President Trump agreed with rioters chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." Recall, Donald Trump was accused of that very same thing, that he wanted his own vice president hung. Finding number 4, Cassidy Hutchinson falsely claimed to have drafted a handwritten note for President Trump on January 6th. Never happened. President Trump did not have intelligence indicating violence on the morning of January 6th. This is directly contrary to the so-called popular script on this. Just never happened. That's exactly what they found. Finding 6. This is important. Cassidy Hutchinson lied. Let me pull it down a little bit. Cassidy Hutchinson lied and falsely claimed. Hang on one second. I hit the wrong button. It happens. All right, back to where I was. She lied, falsely claimed to have drafted him. Okay, President Trump did not have it. Okay, Cassidy Hutchinson lied about the classification status of documents to disparage Mark Meadows. How about that, huh? So she's given testimony that they can prove is false. Number 7, Representative Cheney and Cassidy Hutchinson attempted to disbar Stephen Pisantio. Now, I want to make sure I'm clear about this. Representative Cheney, of course, is Liz Cheney. Cassidy Hutchinson is, I believe she was a former aide to Stevens, one of the, or Mark, who was the aide? It was one of the aides that she worked under. She's supposed to have inside knowledge because she worked directly in the White House. I think it was Stephen Miller was the person she directly reported to. And her attorney that that was representing her was Stephen Pisantio. Okay, I know it gets a little confusing, but here's what you need to take away from this. These two collaborated together to have her own attorney disbarred, lose his law license where he cannot practice law. And it kind of makes sense because Liz Cheney, of course, would be very, very upset with her attorney because Liz Cheney, if the allegations are true, has broken numerous laws and definitely broke provisions that she was supposed to follow as a licensed practicing a lawyer. Okay. Any questions on that? Make sure you put it down so I can clarify. And finally, finding 8, Cassidy Hutchinson misrepresented. Imagine that. Someone misrepresented this. President Trump's action at Lafayette Square Park in the summer of 2020. And what they're hinting or what they're directly saying right there, Lafayette Square Park, that was the park where the January 6th nonsense happened. And Zach's exactly correct. He's shocked, ladies and gentlemen. He's shocked that somebody would have lied. And yes, attacking the driver and grabbing the steering wheel sounds absurd. You know, when I heard this when it originally came out, I agree totally with Zach. It's one of them things that I said to myself, that is just crazy, just the way it's written on its face. Does not make any sense. It's so clearly a lie. I mean, if I'm going to lie about something, I'm going to at least try to come up with a narrative that sounds reasonable, that somebody can somehow, some way believe. All right. And then Julianne said Cassidy's testimony on Trump was sort of, I totally agree. And finally, my friend Sapphire says, yeah, the problem with the steering wheel story is in the limo called the Beast. That's right. It's the limo of the president. They call it affectionately the Beast. There is a 1 1/2 thick bulletproof glass between the presidential cabin and the driver compartment. Yeah, I'm sure there are many reasons why it's obvious that these were just, as I like to call, fantastic lies on their face. Now, I'm not going to get into this right now, but they have other findings, as you can see right here, that pertain to other findings on somewhat related issues by the so-called select January 6th committees. Now, in future live streams, I have every intention of dissecting this with you one little step at a time, because this is going to be a big problem for Liz Cheney. And if President Biden does not pardon her, she's going to face the wrath of the Department of Justice. She's going to see what this lawfare is like. But take a look on your screen at something interesting here. they're just not making these accusations blindly. They have the goods. They have the goods on this. This is a report that's put together and well thought out and very organized. Take a look at this here if you can see this. This is obviously a screenshot on a phone of Alyssa Farah. Again, the lady from The View, Alyssa Farah Griffin, I think is her full name. I'm just going to read this one so you can kind of get an understanding of what they're talking about. It's dated Thursday, April 28th, and it says, this is Alyssa Farah saying the following. I know you're busy, but is there a chance you've touched base with anyone or what we talking about Tuesday night? In other words, she wants to know, is it leaking out or is anybody saying anything to anybody? And so the reply is, hey, yes. So I reached out to Liz. And of course, this one person is acting as the intermediary, we'll just call it the middleman or the middle woman. So this is her responding, hey, yeah, so I reached out to Liz. She agreed to keep our conversation totally confidential. She said she admires you and could tell that you wanted to do the right thing from your testimony. Her one concern was so long, I'm trying to read because it's not spelled correctly, so long as you have counsel, she knows she has an attorney, but yet she's not abiding by the rules she's supposed to abide by. Her one concern is so as long as you have counsel, she can't really ethically talk to you without him. But what she suggests is a follow-up with you, with your lawyer, that she and Dan George can lead, probably can do without other members and Tim. Does that help at all? I can tell she really wants to work with you, and she's just trying to figure out the other way to do it. And the response is, I mean, do you think this is actually of interest to her at this point, or is it moot? And moot means it doesn't matter anymore. It's not anything consequential or of value. And it continues, like, have they moved beyond it? And then, of course, the response is, oh, it's very much of interest. She basically just wants to structure it in a way, I love this, structured in a way you are comfortable, and wants to make sure it's clear. If you speak to them again, it's them asking, not you. So do you see what's going on here? You have all these players willingly entering into what I call a conspiracy. Fannie Willis would call it RICO. And you know what? On some level, it is kind of like RICO. You have people that are basically putting their brains together, and they're collaborating on a way to fix things, fix testimony, have a story that is going to look more negatively against Donald Trump. And this is just one screenshot of their text. And remember, it started off that this Alyssa Griffin, she was the middle person, the middleman in between Liz Cheney, who, of course, was on the committee, the select committee, and this witness. Very, very improper and probably very illegal. And, you know, they're going to get what they deserve for engaging in this type of nonsense. Sapphire thinks that they're going to, but he'll partner. He might. If not, by the way, thanks for that, Zach. If not, as Sapphire said, Bondi is going to fry her. I totally agree. If President Biden does not issue pardons on these people, it's going to be a mess. I would not want to be on the receiving end of this. So let's take a quick moment, because I think you're going to, I don't know. It's always interesting to hear how the left media is already coming out, attacking Trump, attacking the process. Interesting how they always have a certain standard when things are against Donald Trump. And then when people are, let's just say that they are not doing what they think they should be doing, CNN has a different take on the subject. It just depends on what side of the court you're playing on effectively. But why should we be surprised from CNN from doing that, right? I mean, that's just their normal MO. All right, let's take a quick listen to this.
Donald Trump isn't one to let bygones be bygones. And early this morning, well, more accurately, the middle of the night, the president-elect put out this ominous message on Truth Social. Quote, Liz Cheney could be in a lot of trouble. He was referring to claims in a new House Republican report calling for Cheney to be prosecuted for her work on the January 6th Select Committee. The report accuses her of witness tampering. CNN's Kristen Holmes joins me now. Kristen, the time of day is certainly noteworthy. The content is more so.
Yeah, it's certainly starting to feel a lot like the first time Donald Trump was in the White House when he would fire off tweets in the middle of the night. We know he doesn't like to sleep, but now he is also posting things that hold a lot more weight because he is the president-elect. Now, I do want to note one thing. These comments come after Donald Trump sat down for an interview with NBC and essentially said that all the members of the House Select Committee that investigated January 6th should go to jail. And he has had a particular fixation on Liz Cheney. He brought it up in that interview, and he brought her up multiple times on the campaign trail. She is someone who has really gotten under his skin. Now, the reason why this holds so much more weight now is given the fact that, one, he is going to be president, but two, who he has installed to what he hopes is be the head of the FBI, because part of this is essentially the committee saying that Liz Cheney should be prosecuted by the FBI, which in Trump's world, if all goes according to plans, would be run by Kash Patel, a Trump loyalist who we believe, based on everything we have seen from Patel over the last several years, would do whatever it was that Trump wanted, including potentially prosecute.
It's just interesting, never ceases to amaze me. It shouldn't be no great surprise for me or for you, but when it's anti-Trump stuff that's going on and you have lawfare conducted by the Biden-Harris administration and you have the Department of Justice under, what is that, Merrick Garland, going after, at that time, former President Donald Trump, they're perfectly fine with that. And they continue talking about how terrible Donald Trump is and how he needs to be brought to justice and he needs to give account for his alleged misdeeds. It's just like the Democrats never learn their lessons. They just got a nice, huge beating during the election, but now they're turning back to their old tricks, and that should not surprise each of us because it's just par for the course for these people. But it's just interesting how they have a double standard depending on who they're talking
Liz
about.
Cheney. So I do want to talk a little bit about what's in that report. So here are some of the key findings from that subcommittee report that was sent out by the House Republicans. It says Liz Cheney colluded with, quote, star witness Cassidy Hutchinson. Again, these are the key findings. Liz Cheney should be investigated for potential criminal witness tampering. Liz Cheney used the January 6th Select Committee as a tool to attack President Trump. Now, what's really interesting to me about this, Dana, is that these are things that I have heard from Trump allies behind the scenes without any sort of research or report to back it up, that they believed had happened in terms of what happened with the January 6th Select Committee.
Well, they don't have to worry about there not being proof now because clearly with 128 pages of documented proof, they can no longer say that. But what's her biggest gripe now? Oh, well, before Donald Trump, he would make similar accusations, but he didn't have any proof. I mean, so what? Well, what does that even mean? The proof is there now. The committee is saying, hey, we got the proof. Here's the proof. And in that 128 pages, we didn't have time to scratch all of it. There's a lot more evidence in there, and not just text messages. They got pictures. They got maps. They got clear evidence of all of this conspiring that was going on.
Clearly now you have Trump allies putting out this report, which really confirms everything that Donald Trump wanted to have confirmed around the January 6th Select Committee, and particularly around Liz Cheney. And just one quick thing to note, this is the latest in a series of what we have seen from President-elect Donald Trump, where he wants to go after his perceived enemies, Liz Cheney.
Well, of course he wants to go after him. They went after him. They turned our country into a de facto banana republic. It's so hypocritical how these people act like they're so incensed by all this that's going on now. Have y'all noticed the way that they report, if I could say it that way, the way they report is the underlying subtext there is that somehow this is nothing more than a conspiracy between Donald Trump and this new committee to basically say whatever Donald Trump wants to say. Whatever the so-called facts are, they better line up with what Donald Trump has been saying, well, where were they the whole time this has been going on for the last 4 years under Joe Biden? Right? I mean, it's just insanity. And depending on who is in the White House is the only gauge that I can find that demonstrates whether or not they're outraged. If it goes along with what they want you to know or what they want you to believe, then they're happy to report it as sound and convincing evidence against whatever. But when when the shoe's on the other foot, we got a different way to look at that, right? Again, not anything that is that surprising. Only thing I was really surprised about is how fast they have come out with this information. And frankly, the actual results surprised me. I knew they were going to have collusion. I think that's pretty obvious, but I really was surprised in the sense of they have the goods on Liz Cheney actually making sure testimony is changed. And my friends, we're going to look at that in a second, but that is punishable by a substantial amount of prison time. I'm going to tell you what that prison sentence could be very shortly. But shocking nonetheless that she finds herself in this really bad situation. Okay, let's move on. I got 1 or 2 things to say that we're going to start wrapping up. Now, this was in Axios today on their website, obviously. Cheney singled out for retribution in House Republicans J6 report. What do you think about that title? Isn't that title kind of a lie in itself? Right? Cheney singled out for retribution. Well, why isn't the title? I mean, if it was Donald Trump, the title would be something like this. It would say, of course, we'll just use Cheney's name in place of Trump, but it would say Representative Trump. The goods have been found. The Republicans find clear and convincing evidence of Cheney's illegal deeds. I mean, it would be something totally complete, totally different. Let's see. Sapphire says, plus she was referred to the DC bar for disbarment. Yes. Yeah, I think disbarment at this point is probably the least of her problems, but we'll see how that works out. Zach says, if singled out, it implies there are many others not included. That's a good point too. That is an excellent point. It's just I always knew this, but the more I've been doing these videos and I've been paying more specific attention, it is just somewhat I don't want to say it's shocking to me. I mean, I'm kind of over that now, but it's sad. It's probably the word I want to use. It's sad that the American press is so one-sided, and they lie, they distort, and they have an agenda. It's not news. At least on my channel, I don't necessarily say this is news. I tell you that, hey, I think this is ridiculous, and let's take a look at it. On the front end, I don't pretend to be something that I'm not, right? I'm sure there's a more articulate way to say that, but you get the idea where I'm going with that. Singled out for retribution. So, all right, continuing on, we're going to hit the highlights on this. The House, and there's sweet Liz Cheney, by the way, in case you forgot what she looked like. House Republicans in a new report pushed for former Representative Liz Cheney, Republican of Wyoming, to be criminally investigated over her work on the House J6 Select Committee. The big picture, the Republicans party's years-long recasting. What does that imply? Recasting. In other words, they're going to try to rewrite history, aka lie. Their years-long recasting of the deadly U.S. Capitol attack. That alone is trying to sell a particular story that is not correct. Recasting of the deadly U.S. Capitol attack has culminated with the possibility that the writers themselves are pardoned, and those who sought to penalize President-elect Trump for his role in the attack face retribution. Again, just wording things in a way to make Donald Trump look dirty, a way that it's not. It's in court, they would say these are facts, not in evidence. In other words, they're not facts at all. But the pardon section right here, I found this also interesting. That's probably the reason I chose this. They're complaining and they're letting you know on the front end that these people are probably going to be pardoned. Donald Trump has promised to pardon these people, and I think he should, and I think he will. But they're kind of obviously hinting that that this is just ridiculous. But yet you had President Biden just pardon for crimes known or unknown his son that was abusing very young girls. I don't want to really get into that too detailed right now, but we've talked about it. We know what we're talking about. The pictures are all over X. They're all over the internet. If you're interested, I would encourage you to go through and look at that. I can tell you firsthand the little bit I saw because I didn't want to see it. You had the president's son smoking all kinds of drugs, doing all kinds of, and that part really doesn't bother me. If an adult wants to abuse drugs, do whatever you want to do, as long as you're not harming someone else. I don't have a problem with that. The problem I have is that he is definitely photographed in very inappropriate ways. And I will just say they are clearly minor women in the pictures. I'll just let it go at that. But yet this particular article here on Axios is complaining about how terrible it is that Donald Trump is going to pardon J6ers. Yet we know what President Biden has done, and we know what he's contemplating on doing. In an overnight True Social post, Trump said Cheney should be in a lot of trouble based on the evidence obtained by the subcommittee. Trump's post came hours after a House Republican panel led by Barry Loudermilk, we just looked at that report, released a 128-page report that called for Cheney, who lost her primary bid in 2022, to be investigated by the FBI. And finally, the president-elect has previously claimed that House J6 Select Committee members should be jailed. And you know what? Maybe they should be. If there is evidence there, they should receive a trial. And if they're found guilty of breaking the law, just like you, just like me, if we break a law, we have to be, there's consequences to our decisions. God forbid that, right? There's consequences. Well, if you have someone like Liz Cheney, if the allegations are true, and she actively worked with other people to change their testimony, and some of the allegations are that she outright fabricated the testimony, helped this other lady here to fabricate the actual testimony, which, if that's true, that is a very serious crime. So let's go ahead and switch over and let's take a look at that, because I want to drill straight down into what is Liz Cheney looking at as far as possible time in jail should that happen. So let's take a peek at this and we will discuss it. You'll find this interesting. All right, here we go. All right, this document I put together, let me make this a little bigger so we can all see it. Yeah, okay, there we go. All right, so if she's found guilty on this particular on these particular crimes, hang on one second. I got to get to the, I got another document that's got the exact crimes that she is potentially facing. Here we go. All right, based on the, what I did is I went through the document, looked at exactly what evidence they claim that they have, and I kind of inferred. Some of it's listed, some of it I have inferred, but it's very clear what type of crimes they're looking at with her. Number one, witness tampering. This is 18 USC, United States Code anointed 1528, and it involves influencing, threatening, or corruptly persuading another person with intent to influence, delay, or prevent their testimony in an official proceeding. The allegations focus on Cheney's communication with Cassidy Hutchinson. We just discussed that, particularly without Hutchinson's attorney's knowledge, suggesting an attempt to influence her testimony. If proven, this could lead to a penalty of up to 20 years in prison for each count of witness tampering. So each time she interfered with this Hutchinson or some other person, each time it could carry a sentence of 20 years. Now, there's something called suborning perjury, and suborning perjury, you may or may not have heard that word before, but it involves procuring, encouraging, or persuading another person to commit perjury which is giving false testimony under oath if established that Cheney had influenced Hutchison to provide false testimony during the J6 committee hearings. She could face 5 years in prison for each count that she could be convicted of suborning perjury. I don't know where they came up with that word, but that's just a word that occasionally comes up in legal circles. And there's 3 other main ones right here that we need to review. Obstruction of an official proceeding. We're familiar with that because that's what they hammered a lot of the J6ers with, was this obstruction of an official proceeding. And this one is also 20-year penalty in prison on each count. Fabricating evidence. If there's evidence that Cheney fabricated or altered evidence or testimony, this could lead to charges relating to tampering with evidence. Although not explicitly listed in the U.S. Code as a standalone charge, it doesn't matter. The AG, the prosecutor, whomever, in this case Pam Bondi, can simply basically come up with some type of theory. We call it intertwining, and you could have it with perjury, obstruction, or witness tampering. And then this particular penalty, I could not find an exact time because it depends on too many factors. It depends on exactly what charge that Pam Bondi would hypothetically go with, and exactly what the events are. The exact they have to prove intent. They have to prove that she knowingly did something. I mean, it gets complicated when it comes to fabricating evidence, but just the same, it could add up to a lot of time in prison. And then finally, there's ethical violations for attorneys. This is probably the least of her worries at this point. But as we discussed, having communications with someone represented by an attorney, when you know they are represented by the attorney and you yourself are carrying a law license, aka you're a member of the bar, you can be disbarred for that type of behavior. That's something that you could easily be disbarred from. And if you think about it, it makes sense. When you have an attorney, you have an attorney for a reason, and another attorney is supposed to talk directly with that attorney. Remember, when you're an attorney, you are referred to as what they call an officer of the court. And the legal mumbo jumbo for that boils down to this: you are held to a higher standard. You are expected to abide by all the rules of evidence, the rules of procedure. You're expected to act in an honorable manner. In other words, it's not about winning your case. That's not your overwhelming concern. The overwhelming thing you're supposed to be focused on is justice, is making sure that it's a fair justice proceeding. You don't necessarily, as a defense attorney, have to help the prosecution with their case. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you can't go and try to change someone's testimony behind their attorney's back. Changing the testimony in and of itself, as we just discussed, is a crime. It's a crime. So, ladies and gentlemen, she could be facing a serious prison sentence if she was to be charged, tried, and convicted. And as we've talked about, just the stress of this is really difficult for any person to go through. I've seen Donald Trump. You've seen Donald Trump sit day after day down there in trial. It's taxing on anybody. It's very trying on anybody. Let me check, see if there is any questions we have left. See, Julian says we need a winning theme song. Yes, we do. Yes, we definitely do. That would be a good idea. Sapphire, yes, it's Hunter's minor nieces. Yeah, Sapphire, I saw some stuff to where it wasn't just nieces. I've seen stuff that I don't want to be too descriptive about, but if you're interested, you can find it on the X platform. If you start typing in and searching for it, it can be difficult to find. And I can assure you, if you don't find it and you're looking for it, don't worry about it. It's very disturbing. I told you I would not look at it. I started looking through it and I stopped. That was it. I didn't really care to see anything else. And so burning perjury is automatic. Absolutely it is. Absolutely. Just like going around another attorney could be grounds for automatic disbarment. It's a simple rule to follow. It's not that complicated. All right. So that that concludes the main thing I want to talk about today. As I said, I may have some other programs I'm going to appear on. If I do, I generally try to post it on the X platform. That's what my friend over at American Nano wanted me to start doing. I thought that was a great idea. So that's exactly what I've been coming up with. So I hope everything's going good with everybody today, and I hope that y'all have a great day tomorrow. As always, may the Holy Spirit be with each and every one of you, and you find the Lord's special anointing on your day tomorrow until we meet again. It's really a pleasure having each and every one of you join me tonight. I sincerely appreciate it. Thanks for taking time out joining me. It humbles me. I really do appreciate it, each and every one. I know the channel's growing and growing, a little bit at a time here and there, and I'm happy. I'm happy that's happening. But make no mistake about it, I do this because I care. I want to help you in any way that I possibly can, and I love talking about these type subjects. Anything I can do to better your life, that's what I'm here for. So thanks again. I always like to tell you, my friends, keep that mind free. Never give up. Until next time. I am J.R. Dukes.